Ooh, baby. 2024 was a pretty mid-year for MMA, but maybe when you're coming off a banger year like 2023, it just doesn't feel as impactful. But you can see it all throughout the history of the UFC, a pattern of a decent to bad year, followed by a year of absolute heat. With all that being said, here are my predictions for the UFC and MMA in 2025. First up, Bellator is dissolved. All fighters are released from their contracts or sign with the PFL. The PFL has been waiting to take Bellator out behind the barn and put it down for a long time now. They're probably going to get around to it in 2025. Those who don't re-sign are going to be faced with some sort of not-so-ethical business practice, non-compete clauses, something crazy like that. They've already not offered Bellator champions fights, and despite them saying that they wanted to keep Bellator and PFL as sort of independent promotions that they could co-promote with, they're just going to kill it. They keep canceling Bellator events. The end is nigh for Bellator. Say it in every video. It's sad. Bellator was better than PFL. Bellator was just UFC light, and I liked it that way. It worked that way. It was like, oh, it's kind of just a B league, but you need to have a B league. When they did hold a Bellator versus PFL event, the Bellator champs won, I believe, all of the fights except maybe one. So then to shelve those people, put them on the sidelines, cancel their events to promote your crappy 15-6 PFL champions seems a little weird, but they really wanted to be the number 2 promotion. And for a company that talks a lot about giving fighters options and another place to go other than the UFC, killing Bellator doesn't really help their case here. The UFC goes on a talent raid. Okay, a little bit of a broad stroke here, but I have some names as well. Because of the PFL's murder-suicide with Bellator, there's going to be some names that are going to be in free agency. There's going to be some people that are going to want to leave, going to want to test themselves. Dakota Dechiva is probably the best women's fighter outside of the UFC. They're going to try and scoop her up. Patricio Pitbull and Patchy Mix haven't been to the UFC. They are current Bellator champions. They are unhappy with their contract situation. I believe they're going to jump ship. This might not happen with other unhappy fighters like Corey Anderson was already in the UFC. He burnt a lot of bridges. Patchy Mix and Patricio Pitbull haven't done that already. And maybe grab someone from KSW or an Asian fighter from ONE, maybe to bolster your women's division, something like that. Muhammad Mokaev gets rehired. It's kind of just a matter of time. He didn't burn any bridges. The UFC didn't either. They just said, get an entertaining style, get a couple more fights, then we'll welcome you back. So far, finished his last opponent pretty impressively. Probably one more fight, 2 more fights. He can get that done early 2025 and be back in the UFC by the end of 2025, maybe challenge for a belt upon his re-entry. Flyweight isn't deep right now. I could see him challenging for a belt late in 2025. Alexander Volkanovski wins 2 fights. I'm not saying he's going to go undefeated. He just has to win 2 fist fights. He probably loses to Ely, but he could win that. He could stay on the outside, pick him apart a little bit more than he did. He kind of stayed a little more in the pocket, underestimated Ilya's power. I don't think that Topuria chinning him is a foregone conclusion. I think that Volk probably has like the 3rd best chance in that division, but still there's a chance he wins that. But I think he loses at featherweight, probably gets knocked out, has to take time off again, but I think he's very active. Late 2025 wins against Poirier and Gaethje maybe, takes on some older names up there. Maybe fights Arman coming off the loss to Islam, something like that. He's made it very clear that he wants to move up to 155 in the past. And if Ilya beats him, he just has no business down there anymore. What's he going to do? Fight Diego Lopez, fight Movzar? No, you'd be better off fighting big money fights against guys his age, up a weight class, guys that are looking for these retirement fights, legacy fights like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. Those are bangers as well. Poirier Volk, I'd like to see it probably 3 years ago, but Poirier Volk now is still interesting to me. Only 3 UFC champions will lose their belt. There's a lot of divisions in the UFC where there are simply no contenders, or a contender hasn't been clearly decided. Like welterweight is a championship scramble right now. Shavkat is for sure next in line for Belal, but after that you have Gary, Buckley, Usman, Brady, JDM. All these big names, they're all going to want to fight each other. And I can totally see a world where Belal out-wrestles Shavkat, and then maybe gets injured in that fight, sits out the rest of 2025. It's going to be like that in a lot of divisions, so it's going to be a time to figure out number 1 contenders. For bonus points, I think that the people that are going to lose their belts are going to be Juliana Pena, probably to Kayla Harrison, Alex Pereira to Magomed Ankalaev, And the third fighter, well, you got to be patient with him. Just like in real life, we're patient with this guy. You got to be patient. We're going to reveal that later in the video. Alejandro Pantoja cracks the top 3 of the UFC pound-for-pound rankings. A couple of fighters high up in the pound-for-pound rankings are going to lose. Alejandro Pantoja, I believe, is going to get 2 title defenses in minimum, maybe 3. He's going to become undeniable, and he's going to crack the top 3. I don't think he'll be 1, most likely 3, but top 5 for sure. Jake Paul has an MMA fight against a fighter with an unimaginably bad record. Remember that champion I was talking about earlier? 16-5? Yeah, well, they're going to get that guy. And since they want to do super fights now in the PFL because they realized tournaments don't work, he's going to do a super fight against not a super fighter, okay? It's going to be a journeyman in a journeyman's organization. The general public is going to be impressed, but just like every other fight, we're going to be like, yeah, but it was like an old dude with a shit record. But the general public's going to be like, Jake Paul can wrestle now. How would he do it a street fight against Anthony Joshua or whatever? People are going to be like, no, he can wrestle, guys. And he can kick. Paddy Pimblett ends the year in the top 5 of the UFC lightweight rankings. Just looking at the lightweight top 15 right now, there was talk of Paddy fighting a bunch of people. Beneil and Renato Moicano were thrown in there. They're going to end up fighting each other. They may fight Paddy Pimblett, but also Paddy has talked about moving up in the rankings a lot. He's talked very cryptically about fighting Michael Chandler. Chandler has done the same. Michael Chandler is still ranked 7th in the lightweight division. How is that possible? He doesn't win fist fights. He beat Dan and he beat Tony. Tony's geriatric. Dan Hooker is ranked 1 spot above him, which is actually pretty funny. Holloway is ranked 5th. I don't know how he ended up there. He's under Justin Gaethje. The rankings are a fucking mess. But Paddy Pimblett ending up top 5 isn't impossible. If he fights Michael Chandler, number 7, leapfrogs Dan Hooker, Max Holloway. But Dan might fight Justin Gaethje, and then that creates a log jam. And yeah, I think he'll end up top 5, because he might fight twice. He might fight Chandler, and then they'll give him an easy matchup, someone with lesser grappling, like Gaethje, and then maybe he subs him. Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler happens in quarter 4 at 165 pounds. Please, Dana, please bite the bullet and do it. Make it for a vacant belt. I don't care. I get it. It's cool to rag on McGregor. It's cool to rag on Chandler. But they're entertaining. And they make me feel tingly inside. When Conor McGregor fights, he is unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get. Are you going to get karate stance McGregor? Are you going to get buzzsaw McGregor that beats Cerrone? You don't know what you're getting, and the unpredictability builds excitement. Court case or not, he is a draw. He wasn't found criminally liable. He's civilly liable. The UFC doesn't care. They have wife beaters on their roster. They have addicts on their roster. Better or worse, they don't care. I'm not going to predict that fight right now, but let's just say both of them are morons, and it's going to be an entertaining first round. When they start shooting sloppy takedown attempts in the third, then it's going to be a little bit sad. It's like, why is McGregor shooting a takedown? Oh no, you're a striker. And then Michael Chandler, he sprawls it, and then he just keeps hitting him to the back of the fucking head like everybody else. And then he ground and pound wins him, but it's like kind of cheesy. And then McGregor's like, no, it was the back of the head. And then Michael Chandler keeps trying to hug him and kiss him on the lips afterwards, and it's really uncomfortable. That's what I'm thinking. A really uncomfortable build-up and fight between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. Once again, quarter 4, 165 pounds, or 170. Probably 170, but a boy can dream. The UFC returns to the Sphere. Twice in a lifetime, baby. Yeah, I don't trust Dana one bit when he says it was a one-time deal. The novelty of the Sphere is slowly wearing off, and people are realizing that it's kind of just an overpriced gimmick. It was really cool last time, but there was a couple of mistakes. They're going to work out some kinks. It's going to be better than Sphere 1, but it'll probably be less successful. The UFC launches a sister organization in an adjacent combat sport. We could either get Ultimate Boxing Championship or Zuffa Boxing. We heard news about that mid to late 2024, that they were working on something. They already have boxers signed to UFC-esque deals. Callum Walsh, right? They're watching his career with great intrigue. They just signed Mikey Musumeci to a grappling deal. So they're going to make an organization that's a BJJ organization or a boxing organization. They're going to throw it on Fight Pass. Maybe rights negotiations come up for ESPN. They sweeten the pot. They say, we got a new thing going on. but I really think we're going to get something. Maybe even kickboxing. Alex Pereira defends his title once in early 2025 before later defending it against Magomed Ankalaev. They're just going to push that fight back. They're going to do Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill 2. It's going to be so funny. They're going to do Alex Pereira and Nikita Krylov. No, they won't. Nikita's another grappler who probably beats Pereira. I think they're going to try and shelf Magomed for a while, get him a little bit ring rusty, and then maybe Alex has a better chance at beating him. I still think Magomed's going to win. But Alex Pereira is their golden goose right now, and they are going to protect that asset at all costs. The UFC doesn't go anywhere new. There have been talks for events in Africa and Spain and Japan and more European countries other than just France and the UK. They won't go anywhere they haven't gone in the last 4 years, despite Ilia Topuria being the fighter of the year in 2024. They won't go to Spain. They didn't go to Africa when they had 3 fucking African champions. You know how rare that's going to be? Moving forward, 3 champions from the same country? Especially as more countries get into MMA. Not you, India. You're never going to have a champion. Nuh-uh. Japan doesn't have a lot of great fighters, especially in upper weight classes that move the needle. We have Kaya Sakura, we have Tatsuro Taira. Maybe they do a fight night, but I doubt it. I think that gets pushed back to 2026 when both of them are on wins. And yeah, we just get a bunch of undeserving crowds. Maybe they go to Brazil. I think Alex has done enough to deserve a home turf title defense. So probably do Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev in Brazil. But I just feel like you're going to get a shit crowd again. The same crowd that didn't stick around for Glover Teixeira's retirement isn't going to care about the hottest star in combat sports. They're spoiled down there in Brazil. But they'll go down there anyway because Alex Pereira asked nicely, and they're doing him a favor. And he needs all the favors he can get to beat Magomed Ankalaev. Okay. And my final prediction for 2025, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall happens, and it's underwhelming. I was gung-ho the last year about this fight happening. I was on the Tom Aspinall bandwagon. I still kind of am, but now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this is a lose-lose for everybody. Because even if Tom wins, if he goes out there and he starches Jones under a minute like he's done everybody else, how different is it that Tom beats an old guy out of his prime when we just trashed Jon for doing the exact same thing in the Stipe fight throughout his whole career, and then Tom does it and it's suddenly a good thing? Because if he beats Jon, that will be the excuse. Oh, prime Jon Jones, prime frame merchant beating blown up middleweights while taking dick pills, Jon Jones would have totally destroyed Tom Aspinall. He didn't, and he didn't move up to heavyweight because he was too gangly, but that's what's going to happen. Or Jon wins a decision, and everyone's like, oh, fuck, oh, Tom wasn't the guy. Oh, maybe Alex Pereira had a better shot. No matter what happens, I feel like we're going to have some buyer's remorse. Jon maybe wins a controversial decision like the Dominic Reyes fight, and everybody's like, oh, and then Jon bails, and then we never get a true conclusion. And then just like Khabib or Mighty Mouse to a degree, GSP to a degree, even though they kind of passed the torch to Johnny Hendricks and Henry Cejudo, even though those were close fights, very contested fights. For lack of a better term, all of that aura and that resume is gone forever. No one can beat Jon Jones. No one gets to have a win over Jon Jones on their resume. And all of those wins, DC, Gus, Ovid St. Preux, oh, the guy that was like 16 years older than him. Don't forget that guy. All of that goes away. No matter how it turns out, I feel like we're all going to be left with a bitter taste in our mouth. Leave your 2025 predictions in the comments section below. Like, comment, and subscribe for more MMA content. 2024 has been a phenomenal year. Thank you so much for all the support. Thanks for watching, and have a good time.